and welcome back to my channel. So as you can see, I am in the same background as I was in one of my most recent videos when I was talking about my mental health. So I'm still staying with my mum, things are going well, and I'll do an update video next week on the changes we've made to help with my mental health. But for today's video, I am really keen to get this one filmed because it's been requested. I want to get these stories out here, so we're going to be talking today about drug-induced psychosis. Warning, this can get quite scary. So I've discussed briefly on my channel about my previous battles with addiction, not so much in detail yet, but I had addiction to cocaine and then amphetamine separately. And what I want to do is do full videos on both of these addictions at some point where I talk about what got me into the drug in the first place, what it did for me, what the consequences were, and ultimately how I got off them. And I would also like to do more videos on this topic as well, such as how to deal with cravings, how to help a family member or a friend dealing with addiction, and also how to, well, what you should do if you relapse. But I just wanted to test the water with this video today. So what I'm going to be doing is telling you 3 of my own personal drug-induced psychosis stories. Now, each one of these stories relates to taking amphetamines. When I was taking cocaine, I never experienced psychosis. It took everything from me, don't get me wrong. It was a terrible drug. It gave me paranoia, but the psychosis purely came from the amphetamine, and it happened every single time I'd use, and it's one of the most scariest experiences to go through. So, like I say, I've got 3 stories today, and I'm going to be doing them sort of in order of severity. I mean, I've definitely saved the most terrifying one till last. So let's dive into it. I think I'll leave timestamps as well, so if you want to skip to each story, you can do. Right, let's get going. Oh, I just feel this is really important to add into this video as well, because I do talk about my dad and my best friend, who are they are the best support network ever. And you might think, well, how did they not spot this going on? But what you've got to realize is when I was addicted to cocaine, the side effects and symptoms were very different to the amphetamines. So what I was doing when I first started using amphetamines is telling them it was down to sleep deprivation. So they honestly didn't know, because I hid it for a very long time. And I will do a video explaining when they found out and how that went. But I just need to make that clear. They were not being naive. They didn't know. And I do not blame them for that one little bit, because I was being very sneaky and deceitful about it. So, story number 1 was when I trashed my bedroom. And this was in the earlier stages of when I would enter psychosis. So it was one of my first psychotic episodes. And just to give a little bit of insight into how it feels, I'll keep this bit brief, but you know, like when you're dreaming and something happens that isn't possible. So like, say you can fly, or you can go back in time, or I often dream about back in my childhood home, but I never question that in the dream. No one questions it. It just is what it is. Now that is what psychosis is like. I've done a separate video on non-drug induced psychosis because I suffer from that too. So if you want to check that out, you can see that in my videos. But today is purely drug induced psychosis based. And there is a difference. And the difference is, for me personally, when it's drug induced psychosis, it feels so much more real, so much more scary, and also it can make you aggressive, erratic, agitated, and it can make you unsafe to be around. Oh, and just to set the record straight, I am clean now. It's been a difficult battle to get off both the drugs, and I will talk about that in a separate video too. But for story number 1, so I think it was a Friday evening when I'd started using, and the psychosis seemed to kick in with me after around day 2, and it would just progress from there. So this was on the Friday when I'd started taking it, and then it was the Monday night when this incident happened. So from what I can recall, I'd been in bed, not asleep, just picking at my skin, because that's what amphetamines makes you do. It's not nice. And I'd gone into some kind of trance-like state. So I started searching around my room looking for something. And I think what I'd done is I'd hidden my drugs somewhere. And because I was so far gone, I did not know where I'd put them. So I remember the friend, you know, the TV program Friends, they were talking to me in my head, guiding me where to go into my room to find this, what I was looking for. And this was about maybe 1 a.m. and I was just completely gone. My head was gone. I was in a completely different reality. And about 6 a.m, I heard my dad at my door, at my bedroom door, going, "Jordan." And it snapped me out of this psychotic trance I was in. And I looked around my room and I said, "What the hell has happened to my bedroom?" And he just looked at me and he said, "It was you." So what I'd done, without even realizing I'd been doing it, was taken every single item of my clothing, ransacked them, chucked them into the middle of my bedroom. Every single bit of paperwork that I'd worked so hard on over the previous months, things that helped me get my life on track, just torn to shreds, folders everywhere, thrown in the middle of the room. I'd even gone as far as to rip my bedroom carpet up. It was an absolute disgrace. And I just remember being absolutely petrified because, like I say, this was one of my earlier experiences with psychosis, and it was just so shocking to me that I'd done this without knowing that that's what I'd done. So where we went from here was my dad took me for a drive, and he went and got me a cheese sandwich, because when you're taking this drug you do not eat, and we just thought it might help get me back settled, because I was very distressed, very anxious, very agitated, very scared. And I could not even eat this cheese sandwich. We were sat in his car and I was throwing it about because it makes you twitch. I was chewing it and then just not swallowing it. It was just an absolute nightmare. And obviously he could not leave me that way. So he spoke to my best friend, explained what had happened, and he very kindly came round and offered to help me tidy my room, because there is absolutely no way I could have done it on my own, and I cannot explain how trashed it was. So obviously my dad and my best friend were not very happy with me about it, but rather than judging the situation, they just did what they needed to do to help. So my best friend did come round, and I appreciate this so much. But because my head was so scrambled, I kept thinking they were going to come across other bits of drugs in my room that I don't even think existed. I just didn't know what was going on. So as they were cleaning and tidying and organising everything, I was just looking around, thinking, is he going to find something? Is he going to find something? Is it there? And he said he's never really seen anyone behave in such a way like that. It just was not me. I basically lost my mind. So we ended up getting my bedroom sorted. We managed to repair some of the paperwork. Luckily, I hadn't torn my clothes or anything, so they just needed putting back on hangers. And yeah, I think that brings us to the end of that story. It was very terrifying. One of my first experiences with psychosis, and it only got worse from there. So let's move on to story number 2. So the next story is when I thought I was living in a hotel and was being watched by cameras. So this was very common for me when I was using this drug, that I would feel like I was being watched. I would literally stare at my bedroom door the whole time and just think, I was so convinced there was people behind there. I could hear them whispering, I could hear them talking. I felt like they were filming me, and it could literally be maybe 3 or 4 hours. I'd just look at this door and I'd finally find the bravery to peek round it, and there'd be no one there, and I'd just be so confused as to what was going on. But on this particular instance, what I'd done was I'd been up for a few days again, because like I say, you don't sleep, so you're talking anywhere between sort of 4 to 10 days been up on this stuff. And I'd passed out in bed for a little bit, maybe like half an hour, and I'd woken up in full psychosis. And I could hear over the tannoy system, whatever it's called, thinking I was in this hotel, that they said, drugs have been located in room 609, 609, and that's what they kept saying. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, they found out, they're going to come take it away from me. Oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I was just frozen in bed with fear, waiting for them to come and barge into my room, thinking I was in a hotel, even though I was clearly in my bedroom that I've been living in for a very long time. So like I say, psychosis doesn't really make sense, but that's how scrambled it makes your brain. So what I'd done from here is I'd moved where my stash was, Like I said, I was frozen with fear for a bit, but I eventually sort of snuck around and moved it and thought, they're not going to find it now. And the psychosis progressed. So the hotel thing kind of wore off after a while, and I moved into the next phase of psychosis. And this was really odd. So the thing is with amphetamines, and particularly the kind I was taking, if you look up, I think there's an article online, it's called super speed. So it's basically a much stronger version than general speed. I would not recommend any kind, but I'm just trying to let you know the severity of what I was taking. And I'd had all these sores develop on my arms. I get like these big yellow sores that I'd pick at and stuff. And I was lying in bed, and every time I pressed on a certain sore, I felt like I was communicating with a member of my family or a friend or just anyone that I wanted to communicate with. Each different sore resembled, you know, like if you dial on a telephone, it was kind of like I was doing that. And my dad had come up, and I was going, Dad, look what I can do. I'm talking to Grandma, and I can talk to Mum. My grandma's passed away, by the way. And I can talk to Mum by pressing this and all these things like that. And he just gave me the most confused look. He looked so puzzled. Of course he would. And I was just so angry with him that he was not on board with me with this new secret that I discovered of how to communicate with people. I just remember being really agitated. And I think at this point he gave me diazepam, which I'm prescribed, so I'm allowed to take. And then I drifted off for a bit, but that is not the end of this story. So I'd managed to get a little bit more sleep after that. And when I woke up again, like I say, I was back in full psychosis. But this was worse because what had happened was in my head, there was a film playing, and the film was about me and the story of my life. But the psychosis bit had ended before I found out the ending of the film. So I had no idea what had happened or what was going to happen to me. And I was just so unbelievably confused. I was all over the place. And I rung my best friend, absolutely crying my eyes out, screaming, going, what the hell's going on? What's it, blah, 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 blah. And then he said, have you taken something? And I was like, yes. Because in this movie that I'd heard playing, it was documented that I'd been using, but he didn't know. So obviously he was pretty cross about that. But to give him his credit, he came round and he helped settle me down, even though he was not happy with me, because this was a little bit in the later stages where I really should have been learning my lesson and trying to get off it. And I'd lied and I'd snuck about and done it behind people's back. And I think he was quite hurt by that, and my dad too, which you can understand. So he came straight round because I was in this frenzy, and he made me a drink because I was severely dehydrated. I would not drink anything while I was using this drug, and it used to make me so ill. I ended up in hospital quite a few times due to this, and also because of psychosis. And rolled me a cigarette and put my TV on just so I'd have something to concentrate on, something to sort of ground me a little bit. But the guilt I felt over having lied to him, because like I say, this was a bit more in the later stages when I was saying I wanted to get better, and then I'd had this relapse, and I was just so ashamed of myself. And also when you've been taking it for a while, your emotions just go haywire, so everything feels a million times stronger. At first it numbs you, but then it goes on to make everything more painful, so it's quite counterproductive. So I decided at that point that when he left, I was going to take an overdose. And don't take this lightly. This is what this drug can do to you. And yeah, I think it's important for me to just touch on this topic a little bit, because this is what happened to me. So my vision by this point was extremely blurry. I've only got one eye anyway, I've got a false eye, but I normally have very good vision, but due to the amount of time I'd been up and just all sorts of different factors, I couldn't see very well. And I knew my dad was heading home soon after my friend left, because he got me nice and settled, or he thought I was settled. He didn't know what I planned to do. So I went scrabbling around the house trying to find all my medications that I could, but I could not read the packets to tell which was which. I just grabbed all of it, put them into a place in my room, and my dad came back, and I remember just telling him how much I loved him and how much I appreciated him and stuff. He didn't know what my plans were, and I just wanted to kind of have that final goodbye because I felt like such a burden to them at the time. And my plan was to write a note explaining why I needed to do what I needed to do, and then take all my medication and just fall asleep. But it didn't work out that way, and I'd say that is a complete blessing, so I'll explain why now. So I'd continued to use again at this point. I'd taken another dose because I was scared about taking my overdose. I wanted to be high while I was dying, if that makes any kind of sense, just to take that fear away. And in my head, I was convinced I'd taken all my tablets and written a full suicide note, and then I'd passed out in bed. And I had a pretty full sleep. I probably had about 6 hours, which is quite impressive when you're taking that. You don't normally sleep for very long, but I'd been up for a few days, obviously. And I'd woken up and I was just so confused. I was like, how am I still awake? How am I still alive? And what I realised was all these meds boxes were still in my bed, but they'd been sort of opened, but I hadn't taken any of them. And the note, I thought I'd written like a 4-page note explaining everything. And it was just a scribble. It was just a scribble. So what ended up happening is I was so distressed and confused, and I rang my dad. I said, but what about the tablets? What about the tablets? Blah, 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 trying to explain everything. And I had to go to hospital at this point because I think as well, due to the amount of drugs I'd taken, I was suffering an overdose from that anyway. So I had to go there for medical treatment. So luckily I survived that, got myself through the withdrawals and decided I didn't want to go near it again because it really, really frightened me. But I'm not going to say that's the last time I ever used, because it's not. And I'd had relapses following on from that. So that's that story, and now I just want to talk about the final one. So story number 3 is definitely the most terrifying, or it certainly was to me, and I will never ever in my whole life forget this. I've never been so scared. So let me try and recall it the best I can. I had been up for nearly 10 days. I was up, this is the longest I'd ever been up, and I'd kept using throughout this time. My skin was flaking off everywhere. Didn't know what was going on. I was just in bits, and I assume what happened was I must have overdosed and kind of passed out or gone unconscious or something. And when I woke up, this is hard to talk about. I woke up and it was all dark in my room, and my windows had bin bags over at the time because I didn't have blinds and I didn't like light in my room. But I had no recollection of anything. I had complete amnesia. I probably wouldn't have been able to tell you my own name. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know who I was. I certainly didn't know that I'd taken anything. In my mind, I remember even saying, this can't be drugs, you don't take anything. That's how scrambled it was. But when I looked up at the window with the bin bag on, it looked like bars to me, like black bars. So I thought, oh, I've died and gone to hell. That must have been what's happened. And this just absolute feeling of dread overcame me, because it wasn't like I thought I'd gone to hell. It was like I knew I had, and there was no way of getting back out. I was paralyzed to the bed. Like I said before, it can do that. But we're talking paralyzed for maybe about 3 hours. And I was just trying so much to get my memory back, and tiny little things kept piecing back together until I could understand what was going on. But at first it was just, I did not have a clue. So eventually, after lying there for a few hours, I remembered that the last thing I recalled before going to sleep was scratching at my skin and panicking that I was unable to breathe. So that's why I'd assumed that I died from an overdose and gone to hell. But then I remember looking up, because it made me hallucinate too, and in big flashing letters in my room, it was going, the Amphetamine Awareness Club. And then all these people started talking to me, and they were saying things like, now you know the secret, you'll never get out, and taunting me and mocking me. And I was like, no, I don't want to be in this club. I just want to go back to normal. I want to be alive, and I'm scared. And they were just, you'll never get out. And it was absolutely horrifying. And then, like I said, I could not move, and all I wanted to do was just get up. I tried to shout for my dad. I could not make any noise. A bit like sleep paralysis, because I've had that too, but this wasn't sleep paralysis. This was drug induced, and I couldn't do anything. And I was trying to wail out for him, and just nothing would come out. And it was the most frustrating and horrifying thing ever. But it gets even worse from here. So let's get to the gory bit. If you're squeamish, you might not want to hear this bit. So I don't know how long I'd been laying there in this incredible fear for, but eventually I was able to snap out of my body and actually get up out of my bed. But we are talking a good few hours of being in this absolute terror. And as soon as I stood up, it was like I'd forgotten how to walk and I just fell. And that was really scary. I could not coordinate my legs, so I had to sort of coach myself how to walk again. And then I'd very stupidly sprinted down my stairs. I don't know how I managed that. I don't know. I didn't go flying over. I could have very dangerously hurt myself. Started braying on my dad's bedroom door and, Dad, let me in, let me in, let me in. And he came running out, going, what's the matter, what's the matter? And I just went, am I alive, am I alive, am I alive? And he went, of course you are. And then I gave him the biggest hug because I was just so relieved, because I knew that that was my dad and he would not lie to me and I was still alive. But then because of the terror that I'd been through, I literally turned my head and started projectile vomiting over and over and over again. It just wouldn't stop. It was like, I don't know if you want to hear this, but it was like frothy white stuff. So I assumed I'd taken too much of this drug and it was just forcing its way out of my body, as well as maybe being sick just due to the terror of the whole ordeal that I'd been on. So I actually slept in my dad's bed for the rest of that evening. Well, we were into the early morning hours by now, because I was just absolutely in a state about what had happened, and obviously very unwell physically as well. So he wanted to make sure that I was okay. So I managed to go back to sleep being comforted, knowing he was still there. If I'd have gone back into my room on my own, it just would have been too scary for me. And what happened was, I managed to actually get a pretty good sleep after this to help the psychosis wear off. And when I woke up the next day, I didn't go near it again for a while, just due to how scary the whole ordeal was. Like I say, this is the most terrified I think I've ever been in my life, and I didn't want to put myself through that again. So those are my 3 stories. I actually have dozens upon dozens of other psychotic episodes I've had whilst being under the influence of drugs. So if you found this, I wouldn't call it entertaining, but maybe educational, and you want to hear more, I can certainly do more. And what I do need to stress is I am now in recovery. I think I mentioned this at the start of the video. I am not actively using anymore, but I do still get cravings. And what I do is I'm just completely open and honest with my family. I get them less and less as time goes on. I never crave cocaine anymore, but amphetamines has been a difficult one for me. And like I say, I would like to do some more videos on this kind of topic in the future, because I've got some ideas. And I think the main aim for this video is to educate you on what can happen and also put you off. Because if I'd have known this before I ever started taking this, then maybe I wouldn't have done. You know, I had no idea it could cause this kind of damage to my brain. And it's long-lasting damage as well. I mean, with the psychosis, once I'd finally get some sleep, the next day, I'd be in mild psychosis the next day. So I'd have my diazepam and it'd be a horrible day of withdrawal. And then it'd take up to 2 weeks for me to fully recover and feel back like me again. So it's just so not worth it. And if you're struggling, then please reach out, because I do understand the battles that you'll be going through. And I hope you don't mind my blatant honesty in this video. I just want this to be authentic and to really get across the severity of what this can do. So that brings us to the end of today's video. I hope that all made sense. I didn't write a script or anything. I just wanted to sit and chat to you today about these stories and things, because they're still ingrained in my brain and they always will be. So yeah, hopefully, I mean, this was requested, so hopefully it's something that you want to see. So I'll get this edited and posted as soon as I can. And then next week, what I will do is an update video on my mental health and the changes that we've been making since I've had my visit here, which has been working really well. And I can just update you on how things are going. So thank you so much for watching. Please leave a comment if you've got any questions or if this did help in any way. If you like and subscribe, that would honestly mean the world to me, because it's quite scary being so honest and upfront with a video like this. So I hope it goes down well. Thank you so much, and ciao for now.